All right. Welcome back to PALS TV after one of the most spectacular finishes to a session in a very, very long time. We are keeping up that tempo with our new book club series, which I am just absolutely so excited to get into. Our book club's finally going to take us into the Sherlock world, which if you guys are Sherlock fans, there's so many different series out there and movies, and it all started with these books, which I've actually I think I've done them all now. Just a total great series, and I know you guys will enjoy this. So I'll let Professor Phil dive into. Was it Sir Conan Doyle's Sherlock Holmes?
Yeah. So welcome back, gang. As Jonah was saying, we're going to start with some Sherlock Holmes. We're going to start with the very first book, A Study in Scarlet. I assume that you have a general idea of who Sherlock Holmes is. And if you don't, this is really handy because we're going to start with the beginning and they kind of explain everything. I will also, as you got used to during Don Quixote, be throwing in all kinds of commentary in addition to explaining every sentence. But I have a lot of commentary for Sherlock Holmes and for Sir Arthur, because Arthur Conan Doyle was an interesting person all on his own, quite apart from Sherlock Holmes. But Sherlock Holmes is a great character. So the first thing before we get into this that we need to understand is that all of the Sherlock Holmes stories are written as basically a diary of his friend, Dr. John Watson. So that's who the story is told by. And when it says I, we're talking about Watson. He's a doctor who ends up being Sherlock's friend and then just follows him around. He doesn't do a lot of mystery solving himself. He just tells the story of Sherlock to us. He will explain who he is and all of that as we get into it. So that won't be really difficult. But, so we got an idea where we're starting. Where is that book? There it is. Let's pull it up. One moment, I have to answer the door. But look at that fine title page. Okay, so we're back. Study in Scarlet, Sherlock Holmes by Arthur Conan Doyle. There we go. I didn't think it was moving. Okay, again, we start with, it's not quite an epigram, but let's call it a little intro sentence. That this in the story, the entire story, is just the diary of John H. Watson, MD, formerly of the Army Medical Department. This would, of course, be the British Army because they're British and they live in London. And we start with how Watson meets Sherlock. So let's go. In the year 1878, I took my degree of Doctor of Medicine of the University of London and proceeded to Netley to go through the course prescribed for surgeons in the Army. Okay, so 1878, what we generally call Victorian London, although it's really not. This is shortly after our Civil War, so that kind of technology and things. There are some early combustion engines, not really any cars anyplace. People are going to take a horse and carriage anywhere they go. There's no electricity. There's a very little bit of electricity, but it's a new and weird thing. The light is from natural gas, and they just light flames everywhere. If you're familiar with steampunk, this is where that all starts. So Watson says back then, and this is a couple years before anything, I said, I became a medical doctor, a physician. And then I decided to join the Army. And they've got a base with a course just for that. So he went and took that course. Having completed my studies there, I was duly attached to the 5th Northumberland Fusiliers as assistant surgeon. So there's a regiment. I thought it was a brigade. It's a regiment. Fusiliers are small grenade people. They blow stuff up. So he's not actually, he's a soldier, but he doesn't go around blowing stuff up and shooting things. He's there as their doctor. Not their only one. They've got others. He is not in charge of the other doctors. He just got his medical degree, so he's new. But he's got a unit to be with. The regiment was stationed in India at the time, and before I could join it, the Second Afghan War had broken out. So back at this time, and until fairly recently in history, the subcontinent of India, and now the country of India, was owned by the United Kingdom, by England. And they had a lot of soldiers there since the very beginning of their time there. So that's where his unit is. So he gets done with his special studies for the Army back home in England, and then they send him out to India to go join his group. It takes a long time to get there. We don't have any planes. So by the time he gets there, his unit has already gone someplace else. And where they've gone is Afghanistan, because they're, you know, I mean, we're still fighting in Afghanistan for, what is it now, 19 years? Everybody does that. Afghanistan is not a good place to have a war, and you're there forever, and nobody does really well. The British fought there a couple of times. This is the second one. They did not do well. The Russians did not do well later. So when he gets there, his regiment's gone already. On landing at Bombay, I learned that my corps had advanced through the passes, was already deep in the enemy's country. This war's broken out, and once I get to where they're supposed to be, I've learned not only have they left, they're already fighting in this new war. I followed, however, with many other officers who were in the same situation as myself, and succeeded in reaching Kandahar in safety, where I found my regiment and at once entered upon my new duties. So like many military people, to this day, he gets to his place, he figures out, oh, they're not here anymore. I'll go track them down. And a lot of other officers were there to go to his same unit. So they all go together. And they get there, easy trip. He finds his regiment and he starts acting as a surgeon. The campaign brought honors and promotion to many, but for me, it had nothing but misfortune and disaster. Despite the fact that the war didn't go well for the English as a whole, a lot of officers got promotions out of this. They got a lot of medals from it, very often for failing spectacularly at their jobs. It was a big thing at that time for the English military. But John Watson didn't work out real well for him. I was removed from my brigade and attached to the Berkshires, with whom I served at the fatal Battle of Maiwand. So even though he's with the Fusiliers, there was another unit there, and they said, you know, they need a surgeon. We're good right here. You're not the only one we have. So you go work with them for a little while. Temporary additional duty. You'll be fine. So he goes, and when he shows up there, they have a really, really nasty battle. It does not go well for the Berkshires at all. Or John Watson. There I was struck on the shoulder by a Giselle bullet, which shattered the bone and grazed the subclavian artery. So John gets shot. And Giselle, or who we now call the Mujahideen, well, who we used to call in the 80s when they were fighting the Russians, are basically the Taliban now. The local fighters, and very often freedom fighters in Afghanistan, depending on what side everybody's on. So he gets hit in the shoulder, and it's right here, so it breaks the collarbone, and the subclavian artery is the artery that runs right behind your collarbone, down along here, and then into your arm to get blood to your arm. It's a big deal. Those are very nasty wounds even today. Back when medicine wasn't quite as good as it is now, you could quite easily lose your arm from that. Even in the best of times, you're going to lose a lot of strength in it. I should have fallen into the hands of the murderous Ghazis had it not been for the devotion and courage shown by Murray, my orderly, who threw me across a pack horse and succeeded in bringing me safely to the British lines. This is a very common idea in English literature of this colonial period, late colonial period, that you have a gentleman, an officer, an educated, and fairly wealthy person. And there's a guy that works for him, an orderly, a valet, a butler, somebody that's from the working classes and is just a good, solid person and really does all the work. So Murray is the orderly here. And as with so many officers, when he gets hurt, the orderly drags him out and saves his life. Worn with pain and weak from the prolonged hardships which I had undergone, I was removed with a great train of wounded sufferers to the base hospital at Peshawar. So again, this was not a great war for the English. They got beat up a lot. So everybody needs to go back. You can't have a hospital right where you're fighting. You blow up the hospital. So all the wounded people are sent back to a nearby, but behind the lines, city where they've got to go to hospital. Reasonable hospital. Here I rallied and had already improved so far as to be able to walk about the wards and even to bask a little upon the veranda when I was struck down by enteric fever, that curse of our Indian possessions. So enteric fever is a fever of the guts. There's parasites in water and food everywhere, especially when you go to a new place. You are not used to those parasites, so you can get pretty messed up by it. Enteric fever also will affect your blood, as would any stomach fever if it goes on long enough and you get the wrong things. Remember, Watson is already wounded with a pretty bad gunshot. So as he's starting to get better, he gets really sick. And for all the wars we've had, in wars, a lot fewer people die from bullets than die of disease after they get shot. So this might take down Watson. It won't, because he writes the story. So we already know what happens. Almost lost that. For months, my life was despaired of. When at last I came to myself and became convalescent, I was so weak and emaciated, the medical board determined that not a day should be lost in sending me back to England. So he's not doing really well, and they think, oh, we're going to lose Watson. He's not making it. This sickness is too bad. Is that finally he gets better. But he's so beat up by this disease that a bunch of other doctors look at him and say, oh, you're just no good to the army anymore. We're going to send you home. I was dispatched accordingly in the troop ship Orontes and landed a month later on Portsmouth Jetty with my health irretrievably ruined, but with permission from a paternal government to spend the next 9 months in attempting to improve it. So the army says, look, you just relax. If you get any better, then come back. But take most of a year, see if you can be less sick. Ooh, that should not have gone down that far. There we go. I'd neither kith nor kin in England, and was therefore as free as air, or as free as an income of 11 shillings and 6 pence a day will permit a man to be. So I said, I don't have any family. I don't have any friends at all. Everybody I knew was in the army. So I could do whatever I want, except all I've got is my pay. And it's, I believe it would be half pay at that time since he's not working, but that may be earlier in history. They may have been giving full pay. I'm not positive. And he says, you can't do a whole lot on this kind of pay. That was pretty decent money. Uh, he doesn't think it's a lot because as a private doctor, he would certainly make a lot more. Uh, People he knew from school are doing a lot better than he is. He's doing a lot better than most people in England, though. He would not have to work, for instance. Under such circumstances, I naturally gravitated to London, that great cesspool into which all the loungers and idlers of the empire are irresistibly drained. He says, well, I don't really have anything to do, so I'm going to the capital. Has nothing to do, it goes there. And that's why it's sometimes not the best place. It's a great place. Don't listen to Watson. Sour grapes. There I stayed for some time at a private hotel in the Strand, leading a comfortless, meaningless existence, spending such money as I had considerably more freely than I ought. So he gets himself a hotel room. He can clearly afford a hotel room. He can live in a hotel, so he's doing okay. And he just starts wasting his money. He's got nothing to do with his life, has no purpose. It's just rough. And he just runs through all the cash that he's got. So alarming did the state of my finances become that I soon realized that I must either leave the metropolis and rusticate somewhere in the country, or that I must make a complete alteration in my style of living. I don't know why he says rusticate in the country, because rusticate means go to the country and out of the city. But fairly common phrasing. He doesn't have any money and running out. So either he's got to get out of the city and go find a little place where he can get cheap and where he won't be tempted to spend so much money, or he's got to stop living at this hotel and find some different way to do it. Choosing the latter alternative, I began by making up my mind to leave the hotel and to take up my quarters in some less pretentious and less expensive domicile. So Watson says, I ain't moving to the country. I'm not down with that. I'm going to go find a cheaper place and I'll figure it out. And then I'll probably spend a lot less money too. On the very day that I'd come to this conclusion, I was standing at the Criterion bar when someone tapped me on the shoulder, and turning round, I recognized young Stamford, who had been a dresser under me at Bart's. So he goes to a bar to have a drink after he decides, I got to find a new place to live, and runs into somebody that he knew when he was in the teaching hospital. This person is a dresser, which means they act like a type of nurse. So when you cut somebody in surgery, somebody's got to bandage that up. And that's what a dresser does. They do all the bandaging. The sight of a friendly face in the great wilderness of London is a pleasant thing indeed to a lonely man. When you're in the big city, it's tough and you don't know anybody. All of a sudden you see somebody that you know. It's real exciting, very happy. In the old days, Stamford had never been a particular crony of mine, but now I hailed him with enthusiasm, and he, in his turn, appeared to be delighted to see me. And we weren't great friends when we were at the hospital, but, I don't know anybody, so now I'm real excited to see him. And I said, hey, Stamford, it's great to see you. And Stamford says, yay, it's great to see you too, Watson. They very often use last names. In the exuberance of my joy, I asked him to lunch with me at the Holborn, and we started off together in a hansom. So apparently he's at the bar in the middle of the day, and he says, hey, I haven't seen you in a long time. You want to go have some lunch at this restaurant? And the guy says, yeah, it's great. So they get a horse and carriage. A hansom is generally a one-horse open-top thing, like the ones you see in movies and stuff, and sometimes downtown. Run around cities, you pay him $10 and they'll take you around a park. Whatever have you been doing with yourself, Watson? He asked in undisguised wonder as we rattled through the crowded London streets. You were as thin as a lathe and brown as a nut. I said, I don't remember you looking like this. You used to be a nice plump guy and healthy. Now you look thin and you're real dark. We English, we don't get any sun. We're always real pale white, but you've got a great tan. Where you been? I gave him a short sketch of my adventures and had hardly concluded it by the time we had reached our destination. So Watson tells him all that's going on. He says, hey, went to this regiment in India, then we had to go to Afghanistan, then there was a bunch of shooting, and I got hit, and then got sick. Poor devil, he said commiseratingly, after he'd listened to my misfortunes. What are you up to now? I said, oh, that's really sad to hear that. So what are you doing with your life? Looking for lodgings, I answered. Trying to solve the problem as to whether it is possible to get comfortable rooms at a reasonable price. Watson says, I really need a cheaper place to live, so mostly what I'm doing with my life is trying to find a cheap place to live. That's a strange thing, remarked my companion. You're the second man today that has used that expression to me. Stanford says, hey, I met somebody earlier today. They're looking. And who was the first, I asked. A fellow who was working at the chemical laboratory up at the hospital. He was bemoaning himself this morning because he could not get someone to go halves with him in some nice rooms which he had found, which were too much for his purse. I said, oh, I know this guy. He works at the lab up at the hospital. He's a chemist. And he was real upset. He said he found this nice place to live, but it's too expensive for him. He really needs a roommate. By Jove, I cried, if he really wants someone to share the rooms and the expense, I'm the very man for him. I should prefer having a partner to being alone. I said, hey, if this guy needs a roommate, I'm in. I'll do that. I've been alone all this time, and I'd much rather have a roommate. Young Stamford looked rather strangely at me over his wine glass. You don't know Sherlock Holmes yet, he said. Perhaps you would not care for him as a constant companion. He said, you might be looking for a roommate, but I don't know that this is the guy you want. Why? What is there against him? Oh, I didn't say there was anything against him. He's a little queer in his ideas, an enthusiast in some branches of science. As far as I know, he's a decent enough fellow. So Watson says, what's wrong with this guy? He says, I don't know anything's wrong with him. He's just really into stuff. Basically, these days, Stanford is saying he is a massive geek. He's way too into his stuff. And that kind of really being into stuff was not looked well on at this time in England. You had to keep yourself above stuff. Try not to feel emotion. A medical student, I suppose, said I. No, I have no idea what he intends to go in for. I said, well, he must be wanting to be a doctor, right? If he's working at the hospital. The guy says, no, I don't really know what he's studying. I believe he is well up in anatomy, and he's a first-class chemist. But as far as I know, he's never taken out any systematic medical classes. His studies are very desultory and eccentric, but he's amassed a lot of out-of-the-way knowledge, which would astonish his professors. I said, he takes a lot of stuff. He could probably be a doctor. He knows anatomy, the study of the body and where it's at, and he's great at chemistry, but he just takes any kind of classes he wants. It's really strange, but he knows all kinds of weird stuff. Did you never ask him what he was going in for, I asked? No, he's not a man that is easy to draw out, though he can be communicative enough when the fancy seizes him. I said, well, why didn't you ask him what he's studying? Says Watson. Stanford says, it's real tough to get stuff out of him when you want to know information. He'll talk to you. It's not like he doesn't talk to people. He's not rude, but tough to get an answer. I should like to meet him, I said. If I'm to lodge with anyone, I should prefer a man of studious and quiet habits. He said, well, he's a student. That's who I'd like to room with. I don't want somebody out all night partying, throwing a bunch of glasses and being drunk in the house. A good student, that's what I need, somebody quiet. I'm not strong enough yet to stand much noise or excitement. I had enough of both in Afghanistan to last me for the remainder of my natural existence. How could I meet this friend of yours? I said, all that noise, I had enough of in the war. I need something quiet. So can I meet this guy? See if we'd be good roommates? He's sure to be at the laboratory, returned my companion. He either avoids the place for weeks or else he works there from morning to night. If you like, we shall drive down together after lunch. Sanford says, oh, he's always at the lab. Sometimes he doesn't show up forever, but when he's at work, that's all he does. He stays there all day, just barely leaves to sleep. So let's eat, and then we'll go see if he's in. Certainly, I answered. The conversation drifted away into other channels. Watson says, that's great. And then they start talking about other stuff while they eat. As we made our way to the hospital after leaving the Holborn, Stamford gave me a few more particulars about the gentleman whom I proposed to take as a fellow lodger. You mustn't blame me if you don't get on with him, he said. I know nothing more of him than I have learned from meeting him occasionally in the laboratory. You proposed this arrangement. So you must not hold me responsible. The guy says, look, if you don't end up liking the Sherlock Holmes guy, don't blame me. Not like we're great friends, and I'm not really recommending him as a roommate. He's just a guy at work I know. And you said you were okay with it, so if it all goes bad, not my fault. And Watson says, if we don't get on, it will be easy to part company, I answered. It seems to me, Stamford, I added, looking hard at my companion, that you have some reason for washing your hands of this matter. Is this fellow's temper so formidable, or what is it? Don't be so mealy-mouthed about it. I said, why do you keep bringing up that I might not get along with this guy, and that's not your problem if I don't? What's going on? Is he really angry? Does he like hit people? Is he just unpleasant? What's going on? Just tell me. It is not easy to express the inexpressible, he answered with a laugh. Holmes is a little too scientific for my taste. It approaches to cold-bloodedness. I says, it's just something weird that I can't really describe. He didn't really seem entirely human. I know we English don't do emotions, but he really doesn't do emotions. I could imagine his giving a friend a little pinch of the latest vegetable alkaloid, not out of malevolence, you understand, but simply out of a spirit of inquiry, in order to have an accurate idea of the effects. To do him justice, I think that he would take it himself with the same readiness. He appears to have a passion for very definite and exact knowledge. Very right, too. Sanford says, look, he would probably poison somebody just to see how the poison worked. He wouldn't do it to be mean. He would take it himself to find out how the poison worked. He just really wants to know stuff. Watson says, well, that's great. You should know stuff. That's wonderful. Yes, but it may be pushed to excess. When it comes to beating the subjects in the dissecting room with a stick, it is certainly taking a rather bizarre shape. Beating the subject? So they're in the morgue and there's dead bodies there. And he says, Stanford says, yeah, you want to know about science, but Sherlock goes down the morgue, takes a stick, and smacks the dead bodies with them. I think that's a little much. Watson says, what? Who would do that? Why? He says, yes, to verify how bruises may be produced after death. I saw him at it with my own eyes. Did you say he's not a medical student? I says, yeah, he definitely beats dead bodies with a stick. He wants to see if they can bruise after they're dead. Just wants to find out. I've seen this myself. I said, well, it sounds like what a doctor would be interested in. He's definitely not a student of medicine. No, heaven knows what the objects of his studies are. Stanford says, no, I have no idea. Nobody knows what this guy's actually studying. But here we are, and you must form your own impressions about it. As he spoke, we turned down a narrow lane and passed through a small side door, which opened to a wing of the great hospital. He says, nope, but here we are. So you can meet him and figure it out. And they walk through into the hospital, and ta-da, there they are. It was familiar ground to me, and I needed no guiding as we ascended into the bleak stone staircase and made our way down the long corridor with its vista of whitewashed wall and dun-colored door. Near the further end of a low-arched passage, branched away from it and led to the chemical laboratory. So Watson has been in this hospital many times before. He's studied here. now that we've entered, I know exactly where the lab is, and they walk on into it. This was the lofty chamber, lined and littered with countless bottles. Broad, low tables were scattered about, which bristled with retorts, test tubes, and little Bunsen lamps, their blue, flickering flames. There's a great big room with high ceilings, and there's glassware all over, all types of laboratory glass. Big stuff that you boil and you distill things, and there's all kinds of chemicals moving around, little fires. What you'd expect in an old-timey laboratory. There was only one student in the room who was bending over a distant table, absorbed in his work. At the sound of our steps, he glanced round, sprang to his feet with a cry of pleasure. So they get in there, and there's only one person in there who's looking over some kind of chemical thing they're doing. But he sees him over his shoulder, and he jumps up and shouts at him. I found it, he shouted to my companion, running towards us with a test tube in his hand. I found a reagent which is precipitated by hemoglobin and by nothing else. Had he discovered a gold mine, greater delight could not have shown upon his features. I said, I found this. There's this chemical that I've got right here, and it'll react with blood, but it doesn't react with anything else. So we'll always know if something's blood. And he's thrilled with this. If he'd just won the lottery, he wouldn't be more excited. Dr. Watson, Mr. Sherlock Holmes, said Stamford, introducing us. Standard introduction, just give the names of both people. How are you? He said cordially, gripping my hand with a strength for which I should hardly have given him credit. You've been in Afghanistan, I perceive. And Sherlock reaches out, shakes his hand, has a really strong grip. A suspiciously strong grip. Doesn't look like it'd be that strong. And says, oh, you must have been in Afghanistan. Remember, he doesn't know this. They're just meeting. How on earth did you know that? I asked in astonishment. Never mind, said he, chuckling to himself. The question now is about hemoglobin. No doubt you see the significance of this discovery of mine. One says, how did you know I was in Afghanistan? We didn't say anything. I haven't said a single word to you. Sherlock says, don't worry about it. The only important thing is this new discovery and about the blood, and this reagent, this thing that reacts with it. It's very exciting. It's interesting chemically, no doubt, I answered, but practically. Watson says, yeah, what could you possibly do with that? That's not even a thing. Why, man, this is the most practical medico-legal discovery for years. Don't you see that he gives us an infallible test for blood stains? Come over here now. I says, no, we can find out if there's blood. This is hugely important. If people are in court, we can find out if this red stain is really blood, or if this brown stain is actually blood, and people are trying to hide it. Come check this thing out. He seized me by the coat sleeve in his eagerness and drew me over to the table at which he had been working. Let us have some fresh blood, he said, digging a long bodkin into his finger and drawing off the resulting drop of blood into a chemical pipette. He said, come with me, drags him over and says, oh, we're going to need new blood. He takes out a little sticky thing, little needle, pokes himself in the finger, and then grabs basically a glass straw and pulls off the blood. Now I had this small quantity of blood to a liter of water. You perceive that the resulting mixture has the appearance of pure water. The proportion of blood cannot be more than 1 in a million. I have no doubt, however, we shall be able to obtain the characteristic reaction. And so I just got this 1 drop of blood. I'm going to put in a liter of water. So have a 2-liter bottle. About this much water. About a jug like that. 1 drop of water that stirred up. That blood just disappears. You're never going to see it. It's in there, but it's too thin. You don't see any red or pinkishness. Says, look, you can't even tell the water's in there looking at it. But I'm pretty sure that if I put this chemical I've discovered in there, we will be able to find out that there's blood in there. It'll react in the way I expect and saw before. As he spoke, he threw into the vessel a few white crystals and then added some drops of a transparent fluid. In an instant, The contents assumed a dull mahogany color, and a brownish dust was precipitated to the bottom of the glass jar. So Holmes puts a couple chemicals into the water with the blood in it, and immediately the water changes color. It gets this rich red-brown, and then this brown dust, they call it, some sort of like sand or grit or dirt, falls onto the bottom of the water. "Aha!" he cried, clapping his hands and looking as delighted as a child with a new toy. "What do you think of that?" "That seems to be a very delicate test," I remarked. So Holmes is very excited about this and says, "Hey, check that out. Isn't that exciting?" And Holmes says, "Well, that's pretty impressive that it can find something that small." What he means by a delicate test, very discriminating. You can find a little bit of stuff. "Beautiful, beautiful. The old Guiacom test was very clumsy and uncertain. So was the microscopic examination for blood corpuscles. The latter is valueless if the stains are a few hours old. So there was another test for blood stains. It doesn't work real well. And sometimes it doesn't work at all. And you could also just look under a microscope and you can see blood cells, which you can today. But blood cells die, and when they die, they break apart. So if they're out in the air for just a few hours, those blood cells will die and you can't see them, so it's not useful. Now, this appears to act as well whether the blood is old or new. Had this test been invented, there are hundreds of men now walking the earth who would long ago have paid the penalty of their crime. Indeed, I murmured. And he said, "Look, this stuff works on old blood just as well as it worked with this fresh blood I just got out of my finger. So if we knew this before, a lot of people that have committed crimes would be in prison now, even though they're free." And Watson says, yeah, okay. Cool story, bro. Criminal cases are continually hinging upon that one point. A man is suspected of a crime months, perhaps, after it has been committed. His linen or clothes are examined and brownish stains discovered upon them. Are they blood stains or mud stains or rust stains or fruit stains, or what are they? That is a question which has puzzled many an expert. Why? Because there was no reliable test. Now we have the Sherlock Holmes test. There will no longer be any difficulty. Look, there's all kinds of crimes that happen. Somebody thinks that somebody beat somebody up or killed somebody and they got blood on their clothes, and we don't find out about it until a long time afterward. And then we look at the clothes they were wearing and there's stains, and it looks like it might be blood, but it could be a lot of other things too. We couldn't tell before. But now with my test, we'll know. His eyes fairly glittered as he spoke. He put his hand over his heart and bowed as if to some applauding crowd conjured up by his imagination. "You are to be congratulated," I remarked, considerably surprised at his enthusiasm. And Holmes is super excited, bowing to no one. He's thrilled that he has done this. And Watson says, "Yeah, it's a good job there, buddy." He's like, "Sherlock, you're a little excited about this." He didn't actually say that, but he says, "I don't know why anybody would be this excited by this small a thing." There was the case of von Bischoff at Frankfurt last year. He would certainly have been hung had this test been in existence. Then there was the Mason of Bradford, and the notorious Muller, and Lefebvre of Montpellier, and Sampson of New Orleans. I could name a score of cases in which it would have been decisive. I said, yeah, there's all kinds of cases this would have fixed. And people would have been executed for committing crimes. I should note that he says certainly should have been hung, but you hang a picture is hung, people are hanged. Certainly should have been hanged is the correct English. "You seem to be a walking calendar of crime," said Stamford with a laugh. "You might start a paper on those lines, call it the Police News of the Past." And Stamford, the dresser, you'll recall, Watson's not quite friend, but person he knows, said, "Wow, you know a lot about crime. That's bizarre. Maybe you should like make a magazine and just write true crime tales or something." "Very interesting reading it might be made too," remarked Sherlock Holmes, sticking a small piece of plaster over the prick on his finger. "I have to be careful," he continued, turning to me with a smile, "for I dabble with poisons a good deal." He held out his hand as he spoke, My nose that was mottled all over with similar pieces of plaster and discolored with strong acids. I said, yeah, that'd be interesting if I made that, sure. And he puts a little bandage where he cut his finger to get the blood from. And he says, I put my hands in a lot of poison, so I've got to make sure I cover all these cuts. It shows his hands that are covered all over with cuts and little bandages and stuff. And then other chemicals have stained the skin on his hands. We came here on business, said Stamford, sitting down on a high three-legged stool and pushing another one in my direction with his foot. My friend here wants to take diggings. As you were complaining that you could get no one to go halves with you, I thought that I had better bring you together. So Stamford says, yeah, all that's interesting, but you said you were looking for a roommate, and this guy is also looking for a roommate, so I thought I'd hook you two up. Let's go to there, yeah. Sherlock Holmes seemed delighted at the idea of sharing his rooms with me. I have my eye on a suite in Baker Street, he said, which would suit us down to the ground. You don't mind the smell of strong tobacco, I hope? I always smoke ships myself, I answered. Oh, that's good enough. I generally have chemicals about and occasionally do experiments. Would that annoy you? By no means. So Holmes says, yeah, that's great. Awesome. We should totally be roommates. I've got a place in mind. It would be perfect for the two of us. I smoke a pipe with really strong smelling tobacco. Is that going to bug you? Watson says, no, I smoke a pipe and I smoke ship's tobacco. It's pretty smelly. And Sherlock says, hey, that's great. I also do a lot of chemical work there and experiment and stuff. Are you going to be bugged by that? Watson says, no problem at all. And I think that's probably a good place to stop for today, and we can get on into the rest of it. They're going to continue on about getting their lodgings together and being roommates.
It seemed like Watson had a pretty good idea there too about, maybe documenting Sherlock's all of his crime cases. So I wonder if that will turn into something as well, huh?
Yeah, just possibly we might see something in that idea.
I did like I'm not sure if you saw the BBC version, but they turned it into a blog. So he was doing blogging on Watson. So, but
that may be one of my favorite versions. Yeah.
It is a really good version, and I think it holds pretty true to the what Sherlock was about, so I think it was a pretty good version of it. But I can't wait.
I think it's very much the same character. If you guys are interested, watch it.
Yes. Watch the BBC show. I think there was 3 seasons, and really good show. And it's like Sherlock in more of a new day and age, but it actually has a lot of his stories that like new takes on them. So we'll find out more about if Watson decides to move in with Sherlock next week. Nick, did you have a question?
Hello. Hi.
How's it going? Good to see you today, buddy.
Yeah. Hey, man.
I'm great. So we're going to get set up for our last segment, and then but I'll let you guys hang out here and socialize, and we'll see you guys back here at the top of the hour. So hang out. We'll see you guys soon.